4 seconds. That's how long it took for Vivian Sterling's $30 billion empire to become worthless compared to a stranger's hands catching her mid-fall. The video went viral in 6 hours, a corporate queen collapsing into the arms of a single father wearing a $12 shirt. Wall Street wanted to know who he was. Her enemies wanted to destroy him. And Ethan Mercer, drowning in bills and raising his daughter alone, just wanted his normal life back. But when you save someone that powerful, normal doesn't exist anymore. Like this video, comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. And stay until the end, because what happened next changed everything. The check engine light had been on for 3 months. Ethan Mercer sat in the driver's seat of his 2009 Honda Civic, windows down because the AC died in April, and watched the fuel gauge needle hover just above empty. $37 left in his checking account. Payday was Friday. It was Sunday. He'd done the math twice already. Gas to the beach and back, $18. Parking, $12. That left $7 for food, which meant hot dogs from the boardwalk stand and nothing else. "Daddy, are we going?" Chloe's voice cut through his mental calculations. She was 6 years old, buckled into a booster seat he'd bought at Goodwill, wearing a pink swimsuit with a cartoon whale on the front. Her hair, dark like his, wild like her mother's, was pulled into 2 lopsided pigtails he'd attempted that morning after watching a YouTube tutorial. "Yeah, baby, we're going." He turned the key. The engine coughed, hesitated, then caught. Ethan exhaled. They drove out of Queens with the radio off to save battery. Chloe sang anyway, some song about underwater creatures she'd learned at the summer program the city ran for free. Ethan kept his eyes on the road and tried not to think about the eviction notice folded in his back pocket. 3 months behind on rent. Mrs. Chen, his landlord, had stopped making eye contact when they passed in the hallway. The notice said he had until August 15th. That was 19 days. "Are we going to see sea cows?" "Manatees don't live in New York, sweetheart." "But maybe one got lost." Ethan smiled despite everything. Maybe. The truth was he had no plan, no backup, no family who could help. His parents were dead, Sarah's parents hadn't spoken to him since the funeral, and his sister lived in Nevada with her own problems. He worked 60-hour weeks doing data entry for a logistics company that paid $38,000 a year before taxes. After rent, utilities, food, and Chloe's after-school program, he had about $90 left each month for everything else. Emergencies, clothes, medicine, life. It wasn't enough. It had never been enough. But Sarah used to handle the impossible parts, stretching meals, finding deals, making their tiny apartment feel like more than just survival. Without her, Ethan was drowning in slow motion. Some days he wondered if Chloe would be better off with someone else. Someone who could afford new shoes instead of thrift store sneakers with someone else's name written in faded Sharpie inside the tongue. Someone who didn't fall asleep at the kitchen table with bills spread around him like evidence of failure. But then she'd look at him with Sarah's eyes and ask him to read another chapter, and the thought dissolved into shame. He was her father. That had to be enough. The beach parking lot cost $12, just like he'd calculated. Ethan handed over exact change to a teenager in a reflective vest who didn't look up from his phone. They found a spot near the back, where the asphalt shimmered with heat and seagulls fought over abandoned French fries. Chloe was out of the car before he'd even turned off the engine. "Slow down! Ishama bossy. Wasiwas." But she was already running toward the sand, her small body electric with joy, and Ethan felt something crack open in his chest. This was why he'd spent money they didn't have. This moment, her happiness, the way she looked back at him and waved like he'd given her the entire ocean. He grabbed the backpack with their towels and followed. The beach was crowded, families clustered under umbrellas, couples sprawled on blankets, teenagers tossed footballs near the water. The air smelled like sunscreen and salt and grilled meat from somewhere he couldn't afford. Ethan found an empty patch of sand far enough from the crowds that nobody would notice his threadbare towel, or the fact that Chloe's swimsuit was 2 sizes too big. "Can I go in the water?" "Let me put sunscreen on you first." "Mama, you suspect." She groaned but stood still while he rubbed the generic brand lotion onto her shoulders. Her skin was already pink from the car ride over. He made a mental note to reapply every hour even though the bottle was nearly empty. "Okay, stay where I can see you." Chloe sprinted toward the waves. Ethan sat down on the towel, knees drawn up, and watched her dance in and out of the surf. She screamed every time the water touched her feet, pure, unself-conscious joy. Sarah should be here. The thought came without warning, sharp and familiar. She should be here, laughing at Chloe's dramatics, telling Ethan to relax for once, making him believe that everything would work out somehow. But Sarah had been gone for 3 years. Cervical cancer that they'd caught too late because she kept ignoring symptoms, and they didn't have good insurance. And everything hadn't worked out. Ethan closed his eyes and tilted his face toward the sun. Just one day. He could give Chloe one good day. His phone buzzed. He pulled it out, already knowing what it was. Another text from Derek, his supervisor. Need you to cover Martinez's shift tomorrow night. Mandatory. That made 6 days this week. Ethan typed back, can't. No childcare. The response came immediately. Figure it out. He stared at the screen. Figured it out. Like it was that simple. Like he could just manifest a babysitter who worked for free or a mother who wasn't dead. Daddy, look! Chloe was holding up something small and gray. A shell, probably. Ethan waved back and forced a smile. She ran toward him, stumbling through the sand, her face flushed and perfect. It's a crab shell! A whole one! That's amazing, baby. Can I keep it? Of course, let's discuss it, but she clutched it like treasure and ran back to the water. Ethan watched her go and felt the weight of every failure pressing down on his shoulders. He couldn't do this much longer. Something had to break. He just hoped it wasn't him. Vivian Sterling stood on the pier and wanted to throw her phone into the Atlantic Ocean. I don't care what the board thinks, Marcus. We move forward with the acquisition or I'll force a vote. Marcus Chen's voice crackled through the speaker, thin with stress. Vivian, you don't have the votes. Morrison's been lobbying against you all week. If you push this now, then we call his bluff. She walked as she talked, heels clicking against the wooden planks. The pier stretched out over the water, dotted with fishermen and tourists taking selfies. Vivian ignored all of them. Get me the Singapore numbers by tomorrow morning, and fire whoever leaked the Berenson memo. We don't know who... Find out. She ended the call and resisted the urge to scream. 30 years old, and she'd spent the last decade clawing her way to the top of Sterling Industries, the logistics conglomerate her father had built before he died, and left it to a board of spineless men who hated taking orders from his daughter. Every quarter was a war. Every decision required a battle. And now James Morrison, her father's former protege, a man who smiled like a shark and moved like a snake, was trying to orchestrate a coup. The Berenson memo had been the first shot. An internal document questioning her leadership leaked to the Wall Street Journal. The acquisition of the Singapore shipping network was the second. Morrison knew she needed it to secure her position, so he was blocking it, turning the board against her, whispering poison about aggressive expansions and reckless spending. Never mind that her strategy had tripled their stock price. Never mind that she'd outperformed every projection. She was young, female, and she didn't play the game the way they wanted. So they were coming for her. Vivian stopped walking and looked out at the ocean. She'd come to the beach on impulse, needing to escape the suffocating luxury of her penthouse apartment, where every surface reminded her of success that felt increasingly hollow. The water stretched endlessly, indifferent to corporate wars and boardroom betrayals. Her phone buzzed. Another call. She glanced at the screen. Alan Morrison, James's younger brother, equally insufferable. She declined it. The wind picked up, whipping her hair across her face. Vivian turned to walk back toward the parking lot and felt her heel catch on something. The wood. A gap between the planks. She yanked her foot, but the heel was wedged. She pulled harder, the heel snapped, and Vivian pitched forward, her balance gone, the railing too far to grab. The ocean tilted, the rocks below rushed up. She had time to think, absurdly, that this was a stupid way to die. Then someone caught her. Strong arms, solid and sure, pulling her back from the edge. Vivian gasped, her heart slamming against her ribs, and looked up into the face of a man she'd never seen before. Dark hair, tired eyes, a faded gray t-shirt with a small stain near the collar. You okay? His voice was rough, concerned. Vivian realized she was gripping his shoulders, her fingers digging into fabric that felt thin and overwashed. She released him immediately and stepped back, except she couldn't because her broken heel made her wobble. He steadied her again. Careful. I'm fine. Her voice came out sharper than she intended. Thank you. She bent down and yanked off both heels, holding them in one hand. Her bare feet touched the sun-warmed wood. The man was still watching her, his expression unreadable. That was close, he said. I'm aware. Someone laughed nearby. Vivian glanced over and saw a teenager holding up a phone, grinning. He'd filmed the whole thing. She felt a flash of anger, then exhaustion. Of course, someone had filmed it. Everything was content now. Her near-death experience would probably be a meme by tonight. You sure you're okay? The man asked again. Vivian looked at him properly this time. Mid-30s, maybe. Lean in the way of someone who didn't eat enough. There was something fundamentally decent in his face that made her suspicious. Nobody helped strangers without wanting something. I'm fine, she repeated. Really? Thank you for... She gestured vaguely at the spot where she'd almost fallen. That. He nodded. No problem. He started to walk away. Vivian felt a strange pull to say something else, something that acknowledged the fact that this random man had just saved her from cracking her skull open on a jetty. But she didn't know what that thing was, so she stayed silent. Daddy? A little girl came running up to the man, her hair in crooked pigtails, her swimsuit dripping. Did you see the big wave? It almost knocked me over. The man, Daddy, smiled at her, and the exhaustion in his face transformed into something softer. I saw. You were very brave. The girl noticed Vivian. Hi. Hello, Vivian said stiffly. Did you fall? Almost. My daddy caught you? The girl beamed like this was the best thing that had happened all day. He's really strong. The man looked embarrassed. Chloe, come on. Let's let the lady go. Bye, lady. Chloe waved. Vivian watched them walk away, the girl skipping ahead while the man followed with his hands in his pockets. Something about the scene felt unbearably normal. A father and daughter at the beach on a summer day. Simple. Uncomplicated. Vivian looked down at her broken heels and felt a wave of something she couldn't name. Her phone buzzed again. She answered without checking the screen. What? Vivian, we have a problem. It was Joanna Park, her head of PR. There's a video going viral. You need to see this. By the time Ethan got Chloe back to the car, the sun had shifted and his shoulders hurt from too much time in direct light. Chloe chattered the entire walk across the parking lot, telling him about every wave and every shell and the really mean seagull that tried to steal her crackers. He buckled her in and handed her the water bottle from the backpack. She drank half of it in one go. Can we come back next week? Ethan's chest tightened. Maybe. Please? We'll see, baby. He started the car. The engine turned over on the second try. Small mercies. They drove home in the golden light of late afternoon, Chloe falling asleep in the back seat while Ethan navigated traffic and tried not to think about the text from Derek. He'd figure out the shift tomorrow. He always figured it out. The apartment was on the third floor of a building that smelled like old cooking oil and mildew. Ethan carried Chloe upstairs while she dozed against his shoulder, her swimsuit still damp and sandy. He laid her down on her bed, a twin mattress on a frame he'd assembled from Craigslist, and pulled a blanket over her even though the apartment was stifling. She'd sleep for an hour, maybe two. Then he'd make dinner. Spaghetti with butter and the last of the frozen peas. Not exactly nutritious, but it was what they had. Ethan went to the kitchen and opened the fridge. Ketchup, half a gallon of milk, a block of cheese that was probably expired. The freezer had the peas and a bag of chicken nuggets. He did the math again. 4 days until payday. They'd make it. Barely. He sat down at the kitchen table and pulled out the eviction notice. 19 days. The number felt surreal. 19 days to find $2,000 he didn't have. His phone buzzed. Ethan looked at the screen and frowned. 3 texts from his coworker Jenny, all in the last 10 minutes. Dude, are you seeing this? Ethan, check your phone. You're famous. He opened the message thread. Jenny had sent a link to a Twitter video. Ethan clicked it, confused, and watched his own face fill the screen. It took him a moment to understand what he was seeing. The pier. The woman in the business clothes. Her stumbling forward, heel broken, arms flailing, and him catching her, pulling her back from the edge. The video had 2 million views. Ethan's stomach dropped. The caption read, "Breaking. Billionaire CEO. Vivian Sterling nearly falls off pier, saved by mystery man. Who is he?" He scrolled down. The comments were chaos. Who is this guy? Vivian Sterling just got saved by someone in a $10 shirt. I'm crying. Find him. Plot twist. He's her secret boyfriend. This is like a movie. Ethan put the phone down. His hands were shaking. Vivian Sterling. He'd saved Vivian Sterling. He didn't follow business news, but even he knew that name. Sterling Industries. 30-year-old CEO. Forbes covers. Controversies he couldn't remember the details of. And now there was a video of her falling into his arms with 2 million people watching. His phone rang. Unknown number. Ethan stared at it, suddenly terrified, and let it go to voicemail. It rang again immediately. Different number. Then again. Ethan turned the phone off. In the bedroom, Chloe stirred. Daddy? Right here, baby. He walked to the doorway and looked at her. She was rubbing her eyes, her hair a mess, her face creased from the pillow. I had a good day, she said sleepily. Ethan's throat tightened. Me too, sweetheart. She smiled and closed her eyes again. Ethan went back to the kitchen, turned his phone back on, and watched the notifications explode across the screen like fireworks. He'd wanted to give Chloe one perfect day. He hadn't realized it would cost him everything else. By Monday morning, Ethan's phone had received 47 calls from numbers he didn't recognize. He'd stopped answering after the first 3, reporters, all of them, asking the same questions with slightly different words. How do you know Vivian Sterling? Were you at the beach together? Is there a relationship? Can we get a statement? He'd said no to everything and hung up, then kept hanging up, then turned off his phone entirely and tried to pretend the world hadn't just discovered his existence. It didn't work. At 7:15, Mrs. Chen knocked on his door. Ethan opened it with Chloe hovering behind him, still in her pajamas, eating cereal from a plastic bowl. Mr. Mercer. Mrs. Chen's expression was unreadable. There are people outside, with cameras. Ethan's stomach dropped. What? Cameras. They want to talk to you. They are blocking the entrance. He moved to the window and looked down. 3 news vans parked on the street. A small crowd of people with equipment. Someone pointing up at the building. Oh no, Ethan said. Mrs. Chen crossed her arms. You are famous now? No, it's complicated. Famous people bring attention. Attention brings problems. She gave him a meaningful look. You still owe rent, Mr. Mercer. I know. I'm working on it. Work faster. She turned and walked back down the hallway. Chloe tugged on his shirt. Daddy, why are those people here? Ethan closed the curtain. They want to ask me some questions. About what? About the lady I helped yesterday. At the beach. Chloe's face lit up. The one who fell. Is she okay? Yeah, baby, she's fine. Can we say hi to her? Ethan rubbed his face. Not today. He got Chloe dressed and ready for her summer program, then called Jenny. She answered on the first ring. Oh my God, finally! I've been texting you all morning. My phone's been off. Ethan, you're everywhere, like everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, the news. Someone found your LinkedIn. People are analyzing your shirt. My shirt? They're saying you're working class or something. There's a whole thread about wealth disparity and how romantic it is that you saved a billionaire. Jenny paused. Are you freaking out? Yeah. Okay. Well, freak out later because you need to get to work. Derek's been asking where you are. Ethan glanced at the clock. 7:45. He was supposed to start at 8. How am I supposed to get past the cameras? Back door, loading area, I'll meet you there, see. The loading area was a narrow alley behind the building that smelled like garbage and exhaust. Ethan carried Chloe down 3 flights of stairs, avoiding the front entrance entirely, and emerged into gray morning light. Jenny was waiting near a dumpster, wearing her usual thrift store blazer and an expression that was equal parts concern and amusement. You look terrible, she said. Thanks. I mean it. You sleep at all? Not really. Chloe waved at Jenny. Hi, Miss Jenny, Iats. Hey, sweetheart. Jenny crouched down. You doing okay? Daddy's famous. I know, wild, right? Jenny stood and looked at Ethan. You need a ride? I've got the car. The car that sounds like it's dying? That one. Oh, they made it to Chloe's summer program without incident. Ethan walked her inside, ignoring the stares from two mothers who were clearly whispering about him. One of them had her phone out. He kissed Chloe goodbye, told her to have a good day, and left before anyone could ask him questions. The office was worse. Ethan worked for Grandfield Logistics, a mid-sized company that managed supply chain operations for retailers and manufacturers. The office was open plan, fluorescent lit, and filled with people who normally ignored him. Today, everyone turned to look when he walked in. Derek intercepted him before he reached his desk. Mercer, my office, now. Derek's office was a glass box in the corner with motivational posters about teamwork and synergy. He closed the door and gestured for Ethan to sit. You want to tell me what's going on? Ethan stayed standing. It's nothing. I helped someone and it got filmed. That's it. That someone is Vivian Sterling. I didn't know who she was. Derek leaned against his desk. He was 42, divorced, and perpetually stressed about quarterly targets. Ethan, do you understand the situation this puts us in? What situation? He said, Sterling Industries is one of our competitors. If it looks like we have any connection to them, any personal relationship between our employees and their executives, it raises questions. Ethan stared at him. I don't have a relationship with her. I caught her so she wouldn't fall. That's it. That's not what it looks like. I don't care what it looks like. It's the truth. Derek sighed. Look, I'm not saying you did anything wrong, but corporate is asking questions. They want to make sure there's no conflict of interest. Conflict of interest? I don't even know her name until yesterday. Right, okay. Derek rubbed his temples. Just keep your head down. Don't talk to reporters. And for God's sake, don't post anything on social media. I don't have social media. Good, keep it that way. Derek opened the door. Get back to work. Ethan spent the rest of the morning at his desk, entering shipping data into spreadsheets and trying to ignore the constant stares. At lunch, Jenny brought him a sandwich from the deli across the street. You didn't have to do that. You also didn't eat breakfast. Jenny sat on the edge of his desk. How bad was Derek? He thinks I'm going to cause some kind of corporate scandal. Are you? Jenny. I'm just saying, if you're secretly dating a billionaire, now's the time to tell me. Ethan unwrapped the sandwich, turkey and cheese, his favorite, which meant Jenny had remembered even though he'd only mentioned it once. I'm not dating anyone. I'm barely surviving. Jenny's smile faded. I know. They sat in silence for a moment. Around them, the office hummed with conversations and keyboard clicks and the low drone of the air conditioning that never quite worked properly. For what it's worth, Jenny said quietly, you did a good thing. You saved someone's life. That matters. It doesn't feel like it matters. It feels like everything's falling apart. Everything was already falling apart, Ethan. This is just new chaos on top of old chaos. He almost laughed. Thanks. Anytime. His phone buzzed. Ethan pulled it out and saw a notification from an app he didn't recognize. Someone had created a Facebook group called Finding Ethan Mercer with 12,000 members. Another notification, a Reddit thread analyzing the video frame by frame. Another, a Twitter account posting screenshots of his old high school yearbook. Jenny looked over his shoulder. Jesus. Yeah. You should turn that off. I should throw it in the river. Yeah. He put the phone in his drawer and tried to focus on work. The afternoon crawled. At 3, his supervisor Linda called him into a conference room. Ethan, we need to talk about the Martinez shift. He'd forgotten about the text from yesterday. I can't do it. I don't have anyone to watch Chloe. I understand, but we're short-staffed. Everyone needs to pull their weight. I've worked 6 days this week already. Linda's expression didn't change. And we appreciate that. But this is mandatory overtime. If you can't make it work, we'll have to note it in your file. Ethan felt something cold settle in his chest. You're threatening me. I'm explaining company policy. Right. He stood. I'll figure it out. He didn't figure it out. At 5:30, he picked up Chloe from the summer program and drove home in rush hour traffic that made his blood pressure spike. When they got back to the apartment, there were still two news vans on the street. Ethan parked around the corner and carried Chloe in through the back entrance again. Dinner was scrambled eggs and toast because the peas were gone, and he hadn't had time to go to the store. Chloe ate without complaining, which somehow made it worse. She should complain. She should demand better. Daddy, can I watch TV? 20 minutes. She curled up on the couch with the tablet he'd bought refurbished 2 years ago. Ethan did the dishes, all 4 of them, and stared out the window at the street below. The news vans were still there. One of the reporters was doing a stand-up, gesturing at the building behind her. His phone rang. Unknown number. He ignored it. It rang again. Different number. Then a text from Jenny. Check your email. Now. Ethan opened his laptop, a 7-year-old Dell that took 2 minutes to boot up, and logged into his work email. The most recent message was from Human Resources. Subject line. Mandatory meeting. Tomorrow. 9 a.m. He clicked it. Dear Mr. Mercer, due to recent public attention surrounding your involvement with Sterling Industries CEO Vivian Sterling, we need to conduct a formal review of potential conflicts of interest. Please report to HR at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Attendance is mandatory. Ethan read it twice, then a third time. The words didn't change. They were investigating him. His own company was investigating him for helping someone not fall off a pier. He closed the laptop and sat very still. Somewhere in the apartment, Chloe laughed at something on the tablet. The sound felt impossibly distant. His phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a call or a text. It was a message request on an app he barely used, LinkedIn, which he'd set up years ago and forgotten about. The message was from someone named Joanna Park. The preview read, Mr. Mercer, I work for Vivian Sterling. We need to talk. Ethan stared at the screen. Every instinct told him to delete it, to ignore it, to pretend none of this was happening. But his rent was due in 19 days. His company was investigating him, and the world had decided he was interesting. He opened the message. Mr. Mercer, my name is Joanna Park, and I'm the head of public relations for Sterling Industries. I apologize for reaching out this way, but we haven't been able to contact you through normal channels. Ms. Sterling would like to speak with you about the incident yesterday. Would you be available for a phone call? This is not a media request. This is a private conversation. Please respond at your earliest convenience. Best, Joanna Ethan typed. Why does she want to talk to me? The response came in less than a minute. To thank you properly, and to discuss how we can help with the media attention. I don't need help. I need everyone to leave me alone. I understand. Unfortunately, the situation has escalated beyond what either of us anticipated. Ms. Sterling feels responsible. Please, 10 minutes. That's all we're asking. Ethan looked at Chloe. She was still watching the tablet, completely absorbed. In 19 days, they wouldn't have an apartment. In 24 hours, he might not have a job. He typed, Fine. When? Tonight. 8 p.m. I'll send you a secure number to call. The call came at exactly 8. Ethan sat at the kitchen table with his laptop open, recording software running just in case this turned into something he needed evidence of later. The phone rang twice before someone answered. Mr. Mercer? A woman's voice. Professional. Careful. Yeah. This is Joanna Park. Thank you for agreeing to speak with us. I'm going to conference in Miss Sterling now. A click. A pause. Then another voice, and Ethan recognized it immediately. Cool, precise, the kind of voice that was used to being obeyed. Mr. Mercer, this is Vivian Sterling. Hi. I want to start by apologizing for the disruption this has caused in your life. I understand there have been reporters at your home. Yeah. That's unacceptable. I've instructed my legal team to issue cease and desist letters to the outlets that have been harassing you. It won't stop everything, but it should help. Ethan didn't know what to say. Okay. I also want to thank you, properly. What you did yesterday. She paused, and for the first time, her voice lost some of its polish. You saved my life. I don't say that lightly. You don't need to thank me. I do, actually, and I'd like to do it in person if you're willing. Dinner, my office, somewhere private where we can talk without cameras. Why? Because I owe you, and because I think we need to present a unified front to the media before this spirals further. She hesitated. I understand you've been having issues at your workplace. Ethan went very still. How do you know that? I have people who keep track of things. I know Grandfield Logistics called you in for a meeting tomorrow. I know they're questioning whether you have a conflict of interest. And I know that's absurd, because you didn't even know who I was. So? So let me fix it. One phone call to their CEO, and this goes away. I don't need you to fix my problems. No, you need them to stop existing. There's a difference. Her voice softened slightly. Mr. Mercer, Ethan, I understand pride. I understand not wanting help. But this situation is my fault, and I'm offering you a way out. What do you want in return? Nothing. I want to say thank you and make sure you're not being punished for doing the right thing. That's it. Ethan closed his eyes. Every part of him wanted to say no, to hang up, to handle this himself the way he handled everything himself. But he was so tired. One dinner, he said finally. One dinner. And you don't call my job. I don't want favors. I just want this to stop. There was a long pause. All right, no favors, just dinner tomorrow night. I'll have Joanna send you the details. Fine. Thank you, Ethan. She hung up. Ethan sat in the silence of his kitchen and wondered what he'd just agreed to. Outside, the news vans were finally leaving. Inside, Chloe was asleep on the couch, her face peaceful and unaware that their entire life was unraveling. He picked her up carefully and carried her to bed. She stirred, but didn't wake. Ethan pulled the blanket over her and stood in the doorway for a long time, watching her breathe. One dinner, that's all it was. He could survive one dinner. The meeting with HR was exactly as bad as he'd expected. Two people he'd never met sitting across from him in a windowless room, asking questions designed to sound reasonable but felt like accusations. Had he known Ms. Sterling before the incident? No. Had he ever done work that involved Sterling Industries? No. Did he understand why the company needed to ensure there was no conflict of interest? Yes, but there wasn't one, because he'd never met her before yesterday. They took notes. They asked the same questions different ways. They made him sign a document stating he would not use his connection to Vivian Sterling for personal gain. I don't have a connection to her, Ethan said as he signed. Nevertheless, he left the meeting 40 minutes later, feeling like he'd been interrogated for a crime he didn't commit. Jenny was waiting by his desk with coffee. How bad? They made me sign something. What kind of something? A thing saying I won't use my relationship with Vivian Sterling for personal gain. Jenny's eyebrows shot up. You have a relationship with Vivian Sterling? No, that's the point. I don't. Then why did they... She stopped. Oh, they're covering their ass. Yeah, that's so messed up. Ethan sat down and opened his email. Another message from HR. A follow-up meeting scheduled for next week. He closed the laptop before he could read the rest. The day dragged. At 3, Derek stopped by his desk again. Mercer, you good? I'm fine. You sure? Because if you need some time, I'm fine. Derek hesitated. Okay, well, don't forget about Martinez's shift tonight. Starts at 6. Ethan had forgotten. I told you I can't. And I told you it's mandatory. Derek's voice hardened. You missed this shift. It goes in your file. You understand? They stared at each other. Ethan thought about the eviction notice, about Chloe's summer program that cost $200 a month he didn't have, about the dinner tonight with Vivian Sterling that he still wasn't sure was real. I'll be here, he said quietly. Derek nodded and walked away. Ethan called the summer program and begged them to let Chloe stay until 8. They said it would cost extra. He said fine. He'd figure it out. At 5:30, he texted Joanna Park and said he couldn't make dinner. She called him immediately. Is everything all right? I have to work. Can you get someone to cover? No. Ethan, Ms. Sterling cleared her entire evening for this. I'm sorry. I can't help it. He paused. Tell her thank you anyway, for the lawyers and everything. But I don't think dinner is a good idea. Joanna was quiet for a moment. What if we came to you? What? What if Miss Sterling met you at your workplace after your shift, just for a few minutes? That's insane. This place will lose their minds. Then somewhere nearby, a coffee shop. Anywhere. Joanna's voice lost its professional edge. Please, she really wants to thank you. And between us, she's not great at taking no for an answer. Ethan almost laughed. Fine. There's a diner 2 blocks from my office, Mel's. I'll be done at 8:30. We'll be there. The shift was brutal. 6 hours of processing invoices and fielding calls from angry clients whose shipments were delayed. Ethan's eyes burned. His back hurt. At 8:15, Derek finally told him he could leave. He drove to the summer program and picked up Chloe, who was exhausted and cranky. She fell asleep in the car on the way to Mel's diner, and Ethan carried her inside, her head heavy on his shoulder. The diner was almost empty, just a couple of truckers at the counter and an old man reading a newspaper in the corner booth. Ethan chose a table near the window and laid Chloe across the vinyl seat. She curled up immediately, still asleep. The waitress brought him coffee he didn't order. Long day? Something like that. At 8:40, a black car pulled up outside. Ethan watched through the window as someone opened the back door and Vivian Sterling stepped out. She looked different than she had on the pier. Business suit instead of beach clothes. Hair pulled back, but her face was the same, sharp, controlled, giving nothing away. She walked into the diner, saw him, and hesitated for just a second before crossing to his table. Ethan. Hi. She glanced at Chloe, still asleep. Is this? My daughter, Chloe. She's beautiful. Thanks. Vivian sat down across from him. The waitress appeared again, looking starstruck. Can I get you anything, ma'am? Coffee? Black? The waitress hurried away. Vivian folded her hands on the table and looked at Ethan. Up close, he could see the exhaustion in her face that the makeup didn't quite hide. Thank you for meeting me, she said. I know this is strange. Yeah. I meant what I said on the phone. You saved my life, and I want to do something to thank you properly. You already sent the lawyers. That's the bare minimum. She reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. This is for you. Ethan didn't take it. What is it? A check. $50,000. The number was so absurd that Ethan actually laughed. No, it's not charity, it's gratitude. I don't want your money. Ethan, no. He pushed the envelope back across the table. I helped you because you needed help. That's it. I don't want anything in return. Vivian stared at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. That's ridiculous. You're clearly struggling. Let me help. I'm not a project. I didn't say you were. Then stop treating me like one. They sat in tense silence. The waitress brought Vivian's coffee and disappeared quickly. Chloe stirred on the seat, mumbling something in her sleep. Why are you really here? Ethan asked. Vivian took a sip of coffee. Because I feel responsible. Because the video made your life hell, and that's my fault. You didn't film it. No, but I'm the reason it went viral. She set down the cup. And because I don't understand you. What? You could have sold your story to a dozen outlets by now. Tabloids would pay 6 figures for an exclusive. But you haven't. Why? Ethan looked at Chloe. Because I'm not going to turn my daughter's life into a circus so I can make rent. So you'd rather get evicted? He flinched. How do you know about that? I told you, I have people who keep track of things. Vivian's expression softened. I'm not judging you. I'm trying to help. I don't need help. I need everyone to leave me alone so I can fix this myself. And if you can't, then I can't. But at least I'll know I tried. Vivian was quiet for a long moment. You're impossibly stubborn. Yeah. It's going to make your life harder than it needs to be. Will she? Probably. She almost smiled. Fine. No money. But let me do one thing, please. What? Let me handle your landlord. I can negotiate with her. Get you an extension. Buy you time to figure things out. Vivian, it's not charity, it's logistics. I run a company that solves problems like this every day. Let me solve this one. Ethan wanted to say no. Every part of him wanted to say no, but he thought about Chloe waking up in a shelter, about her asking why they didn't have a home anymore. Just an extension, he said finally. Nothing more. Just an extension? And after this, we're done. No more meetings, no more calls. You go back to your life, and I go back to mine. Vivian looked at him for a long time. If that's what you want, it is. She stood and left 2 20s on the table for coffee that cost $3. Take care of yourself, Ethan. And your daughter. He watched her walk out to the black car. She paused before getting in, looking back at the diner. Their eyes met through the glass. Then she was gone. Ethan sat in the silence and felt something settle in his chest that might have been relief or might have been regret. He wasn't sure which. Chloe woke up as they were leaving. Where are we? Mel's. You fell asleep. Did we eat? Not yet, baby. Let's go home. They drove through empty streets. Chloe asked questions about the day that Ethan answered with half his brain. The other half was still sitting in that diner, watching a billionaire walk away because he'd been too proud to accept help. When they got home, the news vans were finally gone. 3 days passed before Ethan heard from Vivian again, and when he did, it wasn't through Joanna Park or a formal phone call. It was a text message from an unknown number at 6 in the morning while he was making Chloe's lunch. Mrs. Chen agreed to a 3-month extension. You don't owe anything until November. Ethan stared at the screen. 3 months, 90 days, enough time to catch up, to breathe, to figure out what came next. He typed back, how much did you pay her? The response came immediately. Nothing. I explained the situation and she agreed. People aren't always as unreasonable as they seem. Thank you. You're welcome. Now stop being stubborn and accept help when it's offered. Ethan almost smiled. He saved the number and didn't respond. Work was different after that. The reporters stopped showing up. The calls tapered off. The video was still out there. It had 17 million views now, an incomprehensible number, but the initial frenzy had moved on to something else. Some actress getting divorced, some politician saying something stupid. The internet's attention span was mercifully short. Derek stopped pulling him into offices for tense conversations. HR scheduled another follow-up meeting, then canceled it. Linda approved his vacation request for next month without the usual interrogation about coverage. It felt like someone had made a phone call, even though Vivian had promised not to. Ethan didn't ask. He just showed up, did his work, and tried to pretend his life was normal again. But it wasn't normal, because every few days, Vivian would text him something small. A question about Chloe. A comment about an article she'd read. Once, a photo of a seagull stealing someone's sandwich with the caption, "Thought of you." He always responded. Short messages, nothing personal, but he responded. He told himself it was politeness, gratitude for the extension with Mrs. Chen. But the truth was something he didn't want to examine too closely. Talking to Vivian Sterling was the most interesting part of his day. 2 weeks after the diner, she texted him at midnight. Ethan was still awake, sitting at the kitchen table with bills spread around him like evidence of a crime he couldn't solve. Are you asleep? No. Good. I have a question. Okay, why did you catch me? Ethan frowned at the screen. What kind of question is that? A serious one. You didn't know who I was. I was a stranger. You could have just let me fall. No, I couldn't. Why not? Because you would have died. So? People die every day. Why did you care? Ethan sat back in his chair and thought about it. Because I have a daughter, and if something happened to me, I'd want someone to help. That's it. There's no big reason. The response took longer this time. That's a better answer than I expected. What did you expect? Something noble, self-sacrificing, the kind of answer people give when they're trying to sound good. I'm not trying to sound like anything. I'm just tired. Me too. Ethan looked at the bills, at the eviction notice he'd kept even though it didn't apply anymore, at the check engine light invoice he couldn't afford to pay. Why are you still texting me? I don't know. Why are you still responding? He didn't have an answer for that. The next morning, Chloe asked about the lady from the beach, while Ethan was driving her to the summer program. Is she nice? Who? The lady you saved. The one on TV. Ethan glanced at her in the rearview mirror. How do you know about that? Katie's mom told Katie, and Katie told everyone. Chloe kicked her feet against the seat. She said you're famous. I'm not famous, baby. Katie said you're going to be on the news. Katie's wrong. Can we meet her? Who? The lady. Ethan merged onto the highway. Traffic was already backing up. Why do you want to meet her? Because you saved her. That means she's important. She's just a person, Chloe. But an important person. Katie said she's rich. That doesn't make her important. Chloe considered this. If she's rich, does she have a big house? Probably. Does she have a pool? I don't know. Can you ask her? Ethan caught himself smiling. Maybe. That night he texted Vivian. My daughter wants to know if you have a pool. I have 3. Why? She's 6. 6-year-olds care about pools. Tell her she can use them anytime. Ethan stared at the message. That's not what I was asking. I know, but the offer stands. He showed Chloe the message the next morning. Her reaction was immediate and loud. 3 pools. Daddy, 3. I heard you. Can we go? Please, please, please. I don't know, baby. Please? Ethan looked at her face, pure hope, uncomplicated joy, and felt something crack inside his chest. I'll ask. He texted Vivian that afternoon. Chloe wants to know if your offer was serious, completely. When works for you? This weekend? Saturday. I'll send a car. We can drive. Ethan, let me send a car. Fine. Saturday morning arrived hot and bright. Ethan dressed Chloe in her whale swimsuit and packed towels and sunscreen into the same backpack they'd taken to the beach. She vibrated with excitement the entire time. Is the car going to be fancy? Probably. Like in movies? Maybe. Will there be snacks? I don't know, Chloe. There were snacks. The car arrived at 10. A black SUV with leather seats and a driver who introduced himself as Marcus and handed Chloe a bag of cookies without being asked. She ate them with both hands, her face pressed against the window, watching the city give way to suburbs and then to neighborhoods where houses had gates and lawns that looked like golf courses. Daddy, look how big. I see them. Do you think her house is bigger? Probably. It was bigger. The SUV turned onto a private road, passed through a security gate, and stopped in front of a modern mansion that looked like something from a magazine. All glass and white stone and perfect landscaping. Chloe's mouth fell open. Holy cow. Language. But Daddy, it's so... I know. Vivian was waiting at the front door. She'd traded the business suit for jeans and a white shirt, her hair down, and she looked almost normal, except for the fact that she was standing in front of a house that probably cost more than Ethan would make in 10 lifetimes. You found it, she said. Hard to miss. She smiled and looked at Chloe. You must be Chloe. Chloe nodded, suddenly shy. I'm Vivian. Your dad saved my life. I know. He's very strong. He is. Vivian's smile widened. Do you want to see the pools? Yes. The backyard was absurd. 3 pools, like she'd said, a lap pool, an infinity pool overlooking a valley, and a smaller pool with a waterfall that looked like it belonged at a resort. Chloe ran straight to the waterfall pool and stopped at the edge, looking back at Ethan with an expression of disbelief. Can I go in? Yeah, baby. She jumped in with all her clothes on. Vivian laughed, a real laugh, not the polished sound Ethan had heard on the phone, and looked at him. She's wonderful. She's 6. Still wonderful. Vivian gestured to a seating area with couches that probably cost more than his car. You want something to drink? Water's fine. They sat while Chloe splashed and shrieked. A woman Ethan hadn't seen before appeared with a tray of drinks and sandwiches, then disappeared just as quickly. The whole thing felt surreal. This is too much, Ethan said quietly. It's a pool. It's 3 pools and a house that looks like a museum. It's just where I live. Vivian took a sip of something that looked like iced tea. Does it bother you? Yeah. Why? Yeah. Because I can't afford new tires and you have 3 pools. He stopped. Sorry. That came out wrong. No, it didn't. It came out honest. Vivian set down her glass. I know how this looks. I know what people think about me. But I didn't ask for any of this. My father built this company. I just kept it from falling apart. Must be hard, Ethan said, and he meant it. It is. Different than your hard, but still hard. They sat in silence for a while. Chloe discovered that the waterfall pool had jets that created bubbles and lost her mind with joy. Ethan watched her and felt the knot in his chest loosen slightly. Thank you for this, he said. You don't have to thank me. Yeah, I do. Vivian turned to look at him. Up close, in daylight, he could see the fine lines around her eyes. The exhaustion she hid well but couldn't erase completely. Can I ask you something? Okay. What happened to her mother? Ethan's jaw tightened. Cancer. 3 years ago. I'm sorry. Yeah. That must have been... Vivian stopped. I don't know what that must have been. It was the worst thing that ever happened to me. And then I had to keep going because Chloe needed me to. He watched his daughter play. Some days I'm not sure I'm doing a good job. You're doing a great job. You don't know that. Yes, I do. She's happy. She feels safe. That's everything. Ethan looked at Vivian. You have kids? No. Want them? I don't know. I never had time to think about it. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. My father always said children were a liability in business, that they made you soft. Your father sounds like he was awful. He was brilliant and terrible, and I spent 10 years trying to prove I was better than him while using all his strategies. Vivian's voice went quiet. I'm not sure what that makes me. Human, she laughed. That's generous. They talked for 2 hours while Chloe played, about work, about pressure, about the things they'd given up without meaning to. Vivian told him about the boardroom war with Morrison, the constant fights, the exhaustion of being CEO at 30. Ethan told her about the eviction notice, the endless overtime, the guilt that came with knowing he couldn't give Chloe everything she deserved. It should have been uncomfortable, sharing that much with someone he barely knew. But it wasn't. It felt like talking to someone who understood being tired in a way most people didn't. At noon, a phone rang inside the house. Vivian glanced toward the sound, and her expression changed, the warmth draining out of it, replaced by something harder. I have to take that. Okay. She disappeared inside. Ethan got in the pool with Chloe, who immediately tried to dunk him. They played for 20 minutes, splashing and laughing, and Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in months, light. When Vivian came back, the hardness hadn't left her face. Everything okay? Ethan asked. No, but it's fine. She sat down on the edge of the pool. That was my lawyer. Morrison's making another move. The guy from your board? Yeah, he's trying to force a vote next week. If it goes through, I'm out. Chloe swam over. Are you sad? Vivian blinked. A little. My daddy says it's okay to be sad. He's sad sometimes too. Your daddy's very smart. Chloe beamed and swam away. Vivian watched her go, something unreadable crossing her face. She's right, you know, Ethan said. It's okay to be sad. I don't have time to be sad. I have a company to save. Maybe that's the problem. Vivian looked at him. What do you mean? I mean, maybe you're so busy fighting that you forgot why you're fighting. I'm fighting because it's my company. Is it? Or is it your father's company that you're trying to prove you deserve? The words landed harder than Ethan intended. Vivian's expression went cold. You don't know anything about my life. You're right, I don't. But I know what it looks like when someone's drowning and won't ask for help. Ethan climbed out of the pool. Because that was me 6 months ago. Vivian stood abruptly. I should let you get back. I'm sure you have things to do. Vivian, Marcus will drive you home. She walked into the house before he could say anything else. Ethan stood there dripping, feeling like he'd broken something fragile he hadn't meant to touch. Chloe swam over. Is the lady mad? Mine asubainiki sai. Yeah, baby. I think she is. Did you say something mean? I said something true. Sometimes that's the same thing. They gathered their stuff and found Marcus waiting by the SUV. The drive home was quiet. Chloe fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from swimming. Ethan stared out the window and replayed the conversation in his head. He shouldn't have said that. It wasn't his place. Vivian's life wasn't his business. But the look on her face when she talked about her father, that mixture of anger and grief and desperate need to prove something, that was familiar. Ethan had seen it in the mirror after Sarah died. The need to keep moving, keep fighting, because stopping meant feeling everything you'd been running from. When they got home, he carried Chloe upstairs and tucked her into bed even though it was only 3 in the afternoon. She mumbled something about waterfalls and didn't wake up. Ethan sat at the kitchen table and waited for Vivian to text him, to tell him to stop contacting her, to say he'd crossed a line. The text came at midnight. "You were right." Ethan stared at the screen. "About what?" "Everything. I'm drowning and I won't ask for help. I'm fighting for something I'm not even sure I want anymore. And I'm so tired of pretending I'm not. So stop pretending. I don't know how. Start small. Tell one person the truth. I just did." Ethan sat in the dark kitchen and typed, "What do you actually want?" The response took 5 minutes. "I want to stop fighting. I want to sleep for more than 4 hours. I want to have a conversation that doesn't feel like a negotiation. I want to eat dinner without checking my phone. I want to remember what it feels like to be happy." That's a good list. It's an impossible list. Maybe. Or maybe you're just scared. Of what? Of what happens if you stop being the person everyone expects you to be? Another long pause, then, "When did you become a therapist?" "When I became a single dad. It's in the job description. Thank you for today." And for being honest, even when it hurt. Anytime. I mean it, Ethan. Most people don't tell me the truth. They tell me what they think I want to hear. I'm not most people. I'm starting to realize that. Ethan put down the phone and sat in the silence. Outside, the city hummed with late-night traffic and distant sirens. Inside, everything was still. He should stop this. Whatever this was, these texts, these conversations, this strange connection to a woman who lived in a different world, it was going to end badly. It had to. But for the first time in 3 years, Ethan didn't feel completely alone. And that was dangerous. The next week, everything fell apart. It started with a phone call from Derek on Tuesday morning. Ethan was at his desk, halfway through his second coffee, when his supervisor appeared looking like someone had died. "Conference room, now." By end of the conference room had 4 people waiting. Derek, Linda, someone from HR whose name Ethan couldn't remember, and a man in an expensive suit who introduced himself as Richard Kemp from the legal department. "Mr. Mercer, we need to discuss a serious matter," Kemp said. Ethan's stomach dropped. "Okay. We've been conducting an internal review of certain financial irregularities connected to the Sterling Industries account." "What account?" "We don't have a Sterling Industries account. Not directly, but several of our clients do business with Sterling subsidiaries, and there have been questions raised about potential information leaks." Ethan stared at him. Information leaks. Data that should have been confidential ended up in Sterling's hands before it should have. We're trying to determine how that happened. And you think I did it? We're not making accusations. We're gathering information. That's not what this feels like. Pasque. Kemp opened a folder and pulled out several printed documents. These are records of your computer activity over the past 3 weeks. Multiple searches related to Sterling Industries. Several files accessed that you don't normally work with. And a pattern of behavior that raises questions. I looked up Sterling Industries because I wanted to know who I saved. That's it. And I accessed those files because Linda told me to cover for Martinez. Can anyone verify that? Martinez can. Linda can. Linda shifted in her seat. I don't recall specifically asking you to cover those files. Ethan turned to look at her. Yes, you did. 2 weeks ago. You said Martinez was out sick and I needed to handle his workload. I remember asking you to help. I don't remember specifying which files. That's... Ethan stopped. Are you lying? Mr. Mercer, Kemp said calmly, we're not here to debate. We're here to inform you that you're being placed on administrative leave pending the outcome of our investigation. Investigation into what? I didn't do anything. Nevertheless, company policy requires this is because of Vivian Sterling. You think I'm some kind of spy because I caught her on a pier. We're following standard protocols. All setting. No, you're covering your ass. Someone up the chain got nervous, and you're throwing me under the bus to make them feel better. Derek spoke for the first time. Ethan, calm down. Don't tell me to calm down. You know this is garbage. You all know it. Kemp closed the folder. Your access to company systems has been suspended. You'll be paid during the leave period. We'll contact you when the investigation concludes. And if I refuse, then you'll be terminated immediately. Well, Ethan looked around the table. At Derek, who wouldn't meet his eyes. At Linda, who looked uncomfortable but said nothing. At the HR person, who was taking notes like this was a normal meeting. Fine, he said quietly. I'll take the leave. He walked out of the conference room, grabbed his jacket from his desk, and left the building. It was 10:30 in the morning. He was supposed to work until 6. He sat in his car in the parking lot and tried to breathe. His phone buzzed, a text from Jenny. What happened? Derek just told everyone you're on leave. Ethan typed, they think I leaked information to Sterling Industries. What? It's bullshit. They're trying to find a reason to fire me. This is insane. What are you going to do? Ethan stared at the question. He had no idea. He drove to Chloe's summer program and pulled her out early, telling the director there was a family emergency. Chloe asked questions the whole way home that Ethan answered with half-truths and deflections. When they got back to the apartment, he made her lunch and turned on the TV and tried to pretend everything was fine. But his hands were shaking, his chest felt tight, the edges of his vision kept going dark. He was having a panic attack. He recognized it from the months after Sarah died, when grief would ambush him in grocery stores and parking lots and late at night when he couldn't sleep. Daddy, are you okay? Yeah, baby, I'm fine. You look sick. Just tired. He went to the bathroom and locked the door and sat on the floor with his back against the wall. Breathe in, breathe out. Count to 10. All the things the grief counselor had taught him. It didn't help. His phone rang. Unknown number. Ethan answered without thinking. Ethan Mercer? Yeah. This is James Morrison. I'm a board member at Sterling Industries. Ethan's blood went cold. How did you get this number? That's not important. What's important is that we need to talk about your relationship with Vivian Sterling. I don't have a relationship with her, and that's not what my information suggests. You've been texting her, meeting with her. Your daughter went to her house last weekend. How do you... Ethan stopped. You're having her followed. I'm protecting my company's interests, and right now those interests include understanding exactly what Vivian is planning. I don't know what she's planning. I barely know her. Then let me be clear about something, Mr. Mercer. Vivian Sterling is not your friend. She's a manipulator who uses people and discards them when they're no longer useful. Whatever she's told you, whatever she's promised you, it's a lie. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm offering you a better deal. You sign a statement confirming that Vivian approached you first, that she offered you money to fabricate a relationship, and that you witnessed her discussing confidential business information inappropriately. In return, your problems at work go away. Ethan's mind went blank. You're asking me to lie. I'm asking you to tell the truth about a woman who's been lying to you since the moment you met her. And if I don't, then the investigation at your company continues, and I suspect they'll find more evidence of wrongdoing, evidence that will be very difficult to explain away. You planted evidence. I protected my interests, just like you should protect yours. Morrison's voice turned cold. You have until Friday to decide. After that, the offer expires and your problems become much worse. Think about your daughter, Mr. Mercer. Think about what's best for her. The call ended. Ethan sat on the bathroom floor and stared at nothing. They'd set him up. Morrison and whoever else was working with him at Granfield. They'd planted evidence, manufactured an investigation, and now they were asking him to destroy Vivian Sterling to save himself. Sign the paper or lose everything. Tell the truth and watch his life collapse. He thought about Chloe in the living room, watching cartoons, completely unaware that her father was being asked to choose between his integrity and her future. The decision should have been obvious, but it wasn't, because signing the paper meant keeping his job, keeping the apartment, keeping Chloe's life stable, and refusing meant gambling everything on the chance that he could prove his innocence before they destroyed him completely. Ethan stood up and looked at himself in the mirror. His father's face looked back at him, older now, more tired, but still recognizable. His father, who'd worked 3 jobs and never complained, who'd taught him that doing the right thing mattered more than doing the easy thing. His father, who'd been dead for 15 years and couldn't help him now. Ethan unlocked the door and went back to the living room. Chloe looked up from the TV. "Daddy, can we have mac and cheese for dinner? Okay, Schweit." "Yeah, baby, we can have whatever you want." He pulled out his phone and texted Vivian, "We need to talk. Now." Vivian's response came within 2 minutes. "Where?" "Somewhere private. Not a restaurant. Not your office. My place." 1 hour. Ethan called Jenny and begged her to watch Chloe. She said yes before he finished asking. 20 minutes later, she was at his door with a bag of groceries and a look on her face that said she knew something was deeply wrong but wouldn't push him to explain. "You okay to drive?" she asked quietly. "I have to be. Ethan, I'll tell you everything later, I promise. Just thank you." Jenny squeezed his shoulder. "Go, we'll be fine." The drive to Vivian's house took 40 minutes through traffic that made Ethan want to scream. His hands kept slipping on the steering wheel. His heart wouldn't slow down. By the time he pulled through the security gate, he felt like he'd run a marathon. Vivian was waiting at the door. She took one look at his face and pulled him inside. "What happened?" Ethan told her everything. The meeting, the investigation, the files he'd supposedly accessed, Linda's convenient memory loss. And finally, the call from Morrison. Vivian's expression went from concern to furious in the space of 3 sentences. "He offered you money to lie. He threatened me if I didn't. That son of a—" She stopped, took a breath. "Okay, we need to call my lawyers." "No. Ethan." I said no. "Your lawyers can't fix this. Morrison has everything set up. If I don't sign, they'll bury me. And even if I fight it, I'll lose my job. I can't afford to fight." Vivian stared at him. "So what are you going to do?" "I don't know. That's why I'm here." They stood in her enormous foyer, marble floors, abstract art on the walls, a chandelier that probably cost more than his car, and the contrast between her world and his had never felt more absurd. "Tell me the truth," Ethan said. "Did you use me?" "What?" "Morrison said you manipulate people, that you've been playing me since the beginning. Is that true?" Vivian's face went pale. "No, Ethan, no. I reached out because I was grateful, because I felt responsible for the media circus. That's it." "Then why did you keep texting me? Why invite Chloe to swim? Why any of this?" "Because I like talking to you," her voice cracked. "Because for the first time in years, someone treated me like a person instead of a position. Because you were honest when everyone else just tells me what I want to hear. But you knew Morrison was watching. You knew this would happen. I thought I could protect you. I thought if I kept everything quiet, if we were careful—" She stopped. "I was wrong. And now you're paying for my mistake. Us." Ethan sat down on a bench near the door. His legs felt weak. "He wants me to sign a statement saying you offered me money, that you discussed confidential information, that you fabricated our relationship for some kind of corporate advantage. That's insane. But if I sign it, my problems go away. I keep my job. I keep the apartment. Chloe's life stays normal." Vivian went very still. "And if you don't sign?" "Then Morrison makes sure I lose everything. He basically told me he'd plant more evidence, make it impossible to prove I'm innocent. So he's giving you a choice between your integrity and your daughter's future." "Yeah." Vivian crossed the foyer and sat down beside him. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Somewhere in the house, a clock ticked. Outside, birds sang in the manicured trees. "What are you going to do?" Vivian asked quietly. "I don't know. Part of me wants to sign it, take the deal, protect Chloe. But you can't. I don't know if I can live with myself if I do." Ethan looked at her. "My daughter already lost her mother. If she finds out her father's a liar, what does that leave her with? A father who kept her safe. A father who taught her that lying is okay if you're scared enough, that integrity doesn't matter when things get hard." Vivian closed her eyes. "This is my fault. All of it. No, it's Morrison's fault. He's the one doing this. But I gave him the ammunition. I brought you into my world without thinking about the consequences. I was selfish. You were lonely. The word hung between them. Vivian opened her eyes and looked at him. Yeah, she said. I was. They sat in silence again. Ethan's phone buzzed. A text from Jenny. Chloe wants to know when you're coming home. Should I tell her bedtime? Ethan checked his watch. 7:30. He'd been here for 2 hours and accomplished nothing except confirming that he was trapped. I need to go, he said. Wait. Vivian stood. There might be another option. What option? Let me talk to Morrison. Offer him something he wants more than your testimony. Like what? My resignation. I step down as CEO. He gets control, and he leaves you alone. Ethan stared at her. You can't do that. Why not? Well, because it's your company. You've spent 10 years fighting for it. And now I'm tired of fighting. You said that yourself. Vivian's voice was steady. If giving it up means Morrison leaves you alone, then that's what I'll do. Vivian, don't argue with me. I've already made up my mind. This is insane, like you can't throw away your entire career because of me. Watch me. Ethan stood and grabbed her arm. Stop. Just stop. You don't owe me this. Yes, I do. You saved my life. Now I'm saving yours. By destroying your own, it's not destroying anything. It's making a choice that actually matters instead of another board meeting that doesn't. She pulled her arm free. I'll call Morrison tonight. By tomorrow, this will be over. And then what? You just walk away? Give up everything you've built? I give up something I'm not sure I wanted in the first place. You were right about that, too. I've been fighting for my father's company, not mine. Maybe it's time to stop. Ethan felt something twist in his chest. I can't let you do this. It's not your decision. Vivian, go home, Ethan. Be with your daughter. Let me handle Morrison. He wanted to argue, to tell her she was making a mistake, but the exhaustion in her face, the relief almost, made him stop. Thank you, he said quietly. Don't thank me yet. I might screw this up entirely. She walked him to the door. Before he left, Ethan turned back. For what it's worth, I'm glad I met you. Vivian smiled. It was the saddest smile he'd ever seen. Me too. The drive home was a blur. Ethan's mind kept spinning through scenarios, trying to find another way. But every path led back to the same conclusion. Someone had to sacrifice something. Either he signed the paper and betrayed Vivian, or she gave up her company and saved him, or they both refused and Morrison destroyed them anyway. There was no good option. There was just choosing which bad option hurt less. When he got home, Jenny met him at the door. She's asleep. Went down around 8. Jenny searched his face. You look worse than when you left. I feel worse. What happened? Ethan told her. Not everything, but enough. Jenny listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from shock to anger to something that looked like heartbreak. That's evil, she said when he finished. What Morrison's doing, that's just evil. Yeah. What are you going to do? I don't know. Vivian's going to try to negotiate with him, offer her resignation in exchange for leaving me alone. Jenny's eyes went wide. She'd do that? Apparently. Ethan, that's... She stopped. That's a big deal. I know. Like a really big deal. She barely knows you. I know, Jenny. They stood in the kitchen. The apartment felt smaller than usual. The walls too close, the ceiling too low, everything pressing in. Can I say something? Jenny asked. Always. I think she's in love with you. Ethan's breath caught. What? You don't give up your career for someone you barely know unless there's something else going on. I'm just saying. No. We're friends. Barely friends. We just text sometimes. Right. And she invited your daughter to swim at her mansion, and she's offering to sacrifice her company to save you. Totally normal friend behavior. Jenny, I'm not judging. I'm just pointing out what's obvious to everyone except apparently you. Ethan sat down at the table. The same table where he'd sat 2 weeks ago, staring at bills he couldn't pay. The same table where Sarah used to do crossword puzzles on Sunday mornings while Chloe colored. It doesn't matter, he said quietly. Even if you're right, which you're not, it doesn't change anything. She's Vivian Sterling and I'm me. This whole thing was temporary from the beginning. Or maybe it wasn't. Jenny grabbed her jacket. I'm going home. But think about what I said. And whatever you decide, make sure it's what you actually want, not what you think you're supposed to want. After she left, Ethan checked on Chloe. She was sprawled across her bed, one arm dangling off the side, her face peaceful. He pulled the blanket over her and stood in the doorway for a long time, just watching her breathe. His phone buzzed. A text from Vivian. I talked to Morrison. Meeting tomorrow at 10 a.m. He agreed to hear me out. What are you going to offer him? Everything. Don't do this. Too late. It's already done. Get some sleep, Ethan. Tomorrow, this ends. But Ethan didn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through conversations he'd never have, arguments he'd never win. Thinking about Vivian walking into that meeting and giving up 10 years of her life because he'd been too proud to accept help when it was first offered. Thinking about what Jenny had said, about love, about whether it was possible to care that much about someone you'd only known for a few weeks. At 3 a.m, his phone rang. Unknown number. Ethan almost ignored it, but something made him answer. Hello? Mr. Mercer. Morrison's voice, smooth and cold. I wanted to give you a courtesy call before tomorrow's meeting. What meeting? The one where Vivian offers me her resignation in exchange for my leaving you alone. She seems to think I'll agree to that deal. Ethan sat up. She told you. She laid out the whole proposal. Very touching, really. The powerful CEO sacrificing herself to save the struggling single father. It's almost poetic. If you're calling to gloat, I'm calling to tell you it won't work. I don't want Vivian's resignation. I want her destroyed, and you're going to help me do it. I already told you no. You told me no before you understood what was at stake. But now you know what she's willing to give up for you. Now you understand that if you don't sign my statement, she'll offer herself up anyway, and I'll take her company and her reputation. The only difference is whether you help me or watch it happen. Ethan's hands were shaking. What are you saying? I'm saying you have a choice, Mr. Mercer. Sign my statement and help me remove Vivian Sterling from Sterling Industries permanently. Or refuse, and watch me destroy her anyway while you lose your job and your daughter loses her home. Either way, she goes down. The only question is whether you go down with her. You're insane. I'm practical, and I'm giving you one last chance to be practical too. The offer expires at 9 a.m. After that, all deals are off. Morrison paused. Think about your daughter, Mr. Mercer. Think about what kind of father puts pride over her welfare. The line went dead. Ethan sat in the dark and felt the last piece of hope crumble into nothing. Morrison had backed them into a corner where every choice led to the same place. Vivian losing everything. The only question was whether Ethan would help destroy her or just stand aside while it happened. He thought about Chloe, about the eviction notice, about bills and overtime and falling asleep at the kitchen table with exhaustion that felt like drowning. He thought about Vivian at the diner pushing that envelope across the table, about her texting him at midnight, about the way she'd looked at Chloe in the pool, like she was seeing something beautiful that she'd never imagined wanting. He thought about his father's face in the mirror, about integrity, about the difference between surviving and living. At 5 a.m, Ethan got up and made coffee. He showered. He got dressed in the only good shirt he owned. He woke Chloe and made her breakfast and told her Jenny would pick her up for the summer program because Daddy had an important meeting. What kind of meeting? Chloe asked through a mouthful of cereal. The kind where you have to tell the truth even when it's hard. Oh, that kind. She nodded seriously. Those are important. Yeah, baby, they are. At 8:30, he called Jenny and asked her one more favor. Then he got in his car and drove to Sterling Industries headquarters. The building was all glass and steel, 50 stories of modern architecture that screamed wealth and power. Ethan walked through the lobby in his $12 shirt and his thrift store pants and felt every eye turn to look at him. The security guard stopped him at the elevator. Can I help you? I'm here to see Vivian Sterling. Do you have an appointment? No, but she'll see me. Tell her Ethan Mercer is here. The guard made a call, spoke quietly, looked surprised. Go ahead, 47th floor. The elevator ride felt like it took hours. When the doors opened, Joanna Park was waiting. Ethan, what are you doing here? I need to talk to Vivian. Now. She's in a meeting. With Morrison. I know. That's why I'm here. Joanna hesitated. You can't just walk into a board meeting. Watch me. He walked past her, following the sound of voices down a hallway that looked like something from a design magazine. Glass walls, minimalist furniture, abstract art that probably cost 6 figures. The boardroom door was closed. Ethan opened it. 12 faces turned to look at him. Vivian was standing at the head of a long table, mid-sentence, her expression frozen in shock. Morrison sat at the opposite end, looking annoyed. Mr. Mercer, Morrison said smoothly, this is a private meeting. Not anymore. Ethan walked to the center of the room. I'm here to make a statement. Ethan, don't... Vivian started. Let him speak, Morrison interrupted. His smile was predatory. I'm very interested in what Mr. Mercer has to say. Ethan looked around the table. 12 board members. 12 people who held Vivian's future in their hands. 12 strangers who didn't know him and didn't care. My name is Ethan Mercer. 3 weeks ago, I saved Vivian Sterling from falling off a pier at the beach. That's the whole story. I didn't know who she was. I didn't want anything in return. I just didn't want to watch someone die. Morrison leaned back in his chair. Is there a point to this? The point is that Mr. Morrison here has spent the last week trying to force me to lie about Miss Sterling. He planted evidence at my job. He had me investigated for crimes I didn't commit. And this morning, he called me at 3 a.m. to threaten my daughter if I didn't sign a false statement. The room went very quiet. That's a serious accusation, one of the board members said. It's also recorded. Ethan pulled out his phone. I record all my calls with numbers I don't recognize. That's something you learn when you're poor and debt collectors call constantly. Want to hear it? Morrison's smile disappeared. You're bluffing. Try me. Vivian was staring at him like she'd never seen him before. Ethan, what are you doing? What? What I should have done from the beginning, telling the truth. He looked at Morrison. You wanted me to help you destroy her. But here's the thing. I've spent 3 years watching everything fall apart. My wife died. My savings disappeared. I worked myself into the ground, and it still wasn't enough. And the whole time, I kept thinking that if I just tried harder, if I just sacrificed more, everything would be okay. Touching, Morrison said, but irrelevant. It's not irrelevant, because that's what you're asking Vivian to do. Keep sacrificing, keep fighting, keep giving up pieces of herself until there's nothing left. And I'm done watching people I care about destroy themselves. The last sentence hung in the air. Ethan hadn't meant to say it quite like that, but it was out now. True and undeniable. Vivian's eyes were bright. Ethan, so here's what's going to happen, Ethan continued. I'm going to play this recording for everyone in this room. You're all going to hear Morrison threaten a 6-year-old girl to get what he wants. And then you're going to vote on whether that's the kind of person you want running this company. Morrison stood abruptly. You can't prove anything. That recording could be doctored, fabricated. Then let's find out. Ethan held up his phone. Should I play it? This is blackmail, but no, this is honesty, something you clearly have trouble with. One of the board members, a woman in her 60s with silver hair, cleared her throat. I'd like to hear the recording. Me too, another said. Morrison looked around the table. His control was slipping. Ethan could see it in the way his jaw tightened, the way his hands clenched into fists. This meeting is over, Morrison said. No, Vivian said quietly. It's not. She looked at Ethan. Play the recording. Ethan hit play. Morrison's voice filled the room, cold, threatening, every word a knife. By the time the recording ended, 3 of the board members looked sick. That's enough, the silver-haired woman said. James, I think you need to leave. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. This board does not operate through intimidation and threats. If even half of what's on that recording is true, you've violated every ethical standard we have. Morrison's face went red. You're making a mistake. The only mistake was letting this go on as long as it did. She looked at Vivian. Miss Sterling, I believe you have a proposal for us? Vivian was still staring at Ethan. Actually, no, I don't. I'm not resigning. What? Morrison's voice cracked. You said... I said I would consider it if you left Ethan alone, but you couldn't even do that. So now I'm staying, and I'm fighting, and I'm going to make sure everyone in this company knows exactly what kind of person you are. Morrison looked around the table one more time. Then he grabbed his briefcase and walked out, slamming the door behind him. The room exhaled collectively. Vivian turned to the board. I need 10 minutes alone with Mr. Mercer. Then we can resume. Baumchit Maskin Minchmenten. No one argued. Ethan followed Vivian out of the boardroom, down the hall, into a small office with a view of the city that made his apartment feel like a shoebox. She closed the door and turned to face him. What the hell was that? That was me saving you. By exposing yourself to Morrison's lawyers, by making yourself a target, you were going to give up your company for me. This seemed like a better option. Vivian crossed the room and grabbed his shoulders. You recorded him. You planned this. Yeah. When? This morning, after he called. I realized he'd keep threatening people until he got what he wanted, so I gave him enough rope to hang himself. That's... She stopped, laughed. Actually laughed. That's brilliant and insane, and I can't believe you did that. I can't believe you were going to resign. I can't believe you called me someone you care about. Ethan went still. You heard that. Everyone heard that. Right, sorry, I shouldn't have. Vivian kissed him. It was sudden and clumsy and desperate, and Ethan's brain short-circuited for 3 full seconds before he kissed her back. Her hands were in his hair. His hands found her waist. The whole world narrowed down to this moment, this person, this feeling he'd thought was dead. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Vivian pressed her forehead against his. I care about you too, she whispered, in case that wasn't obvious. It wasn't. I'm kind of oblivious. She laughed again. I noticed. Oh, Vivian, don't say all the reasons this won't work. Don't tell me we're from different worlds, or that this is complicated, or that you're not ready. I know all of that, but I also know that I haven't felt this alive in years, and I'm not giving that up without a fight. Ethan pulled back enough to look at her. I have a kid, and no money, and a life that's barely held together with duct tape. I have a company that's about to implode, and more money than I know what to do with, and a life that was completely empty until I fell off a pier. We're a disaster. Probably. This might not work. Definitely might not work. But we're doing it anyway? Vivian smiled. It was the first real smile he'd ever seen on her face. Unguarded, hopeful, terrified. Yeah, we're doing it anyway. But outside, the city spread out in every direction. Millions of people living millions of lives that had nothing to do with them. Inside this small office, 2 broken people stood together and decided to try. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't guaranteed, but it was honest. And that, Ethan thought, was enough. Showmore 1641. The board meeting resumed 20 minutes later, and Ethan wasn't allowed back inside. He sat in the hallway on a leather chair that probably cost more than his monthly rent, watching lawyers and assistants rush past while his phone buzzed nonstop with texts from Jenny demanding updates. What's happening? Are you okay? Ethan, answer me. He typed back, still alive. We'll explain later. The truth was, he didn't know how to explain it. He'd walked into a corporate boardroom and played a recording that could either save Vivian's career or blow up in both their faces. And somewhere in the middle of all that, he'd kissed her. Or she'd kissed him. The order didn't matter as much as the fact that it happened, and now he couldn't stop thinking about it. The door opened. Vivian stepped out, followed by the silver-haired woman and 2 other board members. Her face was unreadable. Ethan, this is Margaret Chen. She's our lead independent director. Margaret extended her hand. Her grip was firm. Mr. Mercer, that was quite an entrance. Sorry about that. Don't apologize. You did us a favor. Morrison's been a problem for years, but we didn't have proof until today. She glanced at Vivian. The board voted to remove him effective immediately. We're also launching a full investigation into his activities. What about the stuff at my job? We'll handle it. Sterling Industries will contact Grandfield Logistics directly. They'll drop the investigation once they understand what really happened. Ethan felt something unclench in his chest. Thank you. Don't thank me. Thank Ms. Sterling. She's the one who fought for you. Margaret nodded at both of them. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have about 50 phone calls to make. She walked away with the other board members, leaving Ethan and Vivian alone in the hallway. Did that just happen? Ethan asked. Yeah, it did. So you're still CEO? For now. Morrison's gone, but his allies are still on the board. It's going to be a fight. Vivian leaned against the wall. She looked exhausted and exhilarated at the same time. But it's a fight I actually want to have. For the first time in years. Because of me? Because you reminded me why I started fighting in the first place. Not for my father, not to prove something, but because I actually believed in what this company could be. Ethan moved closer. What happens now? Now, I go back in there and spend the next 6 hours in damage control meetings. And you go home and hug your daughter. And after that? Vivian smiled. After that, we figure it out, together. They stood in the hallway of Sterling Industries headquarters, him in his cheap shirt, her in her designer suit, and the gap between their worlds felt both impossible and irrelevant. I should go, Ethan said. Yeah. Neither of them moved. Vivian? Yeah? Thank you for everything. She reached out and squeezed his hand. Thank you for being stubborn. The elevator doors opened. Ethan stepped inside and turned back to look at her one more time. She was still standing there, watching him, and the expression on her face was something he'd never seen before. Hope. The doors closed. Granfield Logistics called him that afternoon. Not Derek or Linda or the HR department, but the actual CEO, a man named Robert Granfield, whose voice sounded tired and apologetic. Mr. Mercer, I want to start by offering you a formal apology. The investigation was inappropriate and the allegations were unfounded. We've spoken with Sterling Industries and understand what actually occurred. Ethan was sitting in his car outside Chloe's summer program. So I still have a job? Yes, and we'd like to offer you a promotion. Manager position in operations. Significant pay increase. It's the least we can do to make this right. I don't want a promotion because of guilt. Then consider it recognition of your work over the past 3 years. You've consistently exceeded expectations. This is long overdue. Ethan closed his eyes. A promotion meant more money, more stability, the ability to actually save instead of just survive. When would it start? Next month. We'll send over the details tomorrow. After he hung up, Ethan sat in the parking lot and let himself feel it, the relief, the exhaustion, the strange sensation of something actually going right for once. Then he went inside and found Chloe building a tower out of blocks with 3 other kids. Daddy! She ran over and crashed into his legs. Look how tall! That's amazing, baby. Can we go to the park? Yeah, we can go anywhere you want, Chut. They went to the park near their apartment. The one with the rusty swings and the slide that got too hot in the afternoon sun. Chloe ran straight to the monkey bars, and Ethan sat on a bench, watching her play while his phone buzzed with messages from Jenny, from Vivian, from numbers he didn't recognize. He ignored all of them except Vivian's. How did it go? Good. They offered me a promotion. That's wonderful. How are things there? Chaotic, but manageable. Can I see you tonight? Ethan looked at Chloe hanging upside down from a bar, her face red and happy. I have to put Chloe to bed, but after that, yeah, I'll come to you. Is that okay? You want to come to my apartment? I want to see where you live. It's not much. I don't care. She showed up at 9:30 after Chloe had fallen asleep, and Ethan had spent 45 minutes frantically cleaning things that didn't really get cleaner. When he opened the door, Vivian was standing there in jeans and a sweater, her hair down, looking more normal than he'd ever seen her. Hi. Hi. She stepped inside and looked around, at the cramped kitchen, the secondhand furniture, the drawings Chloe had taped to every available surface. I like it. You're lying. Bombascious. Odd seeing. I'm not. It feels like a home. She picked up one of Chloe's drawings, a family of 3 stick figures with a sun in the corner. Is this us? Ethan looked at the drawing. He'd seen it on the fridge that morning, but hadn't really registered what it meant. The tall figure on the left was clearly him. The small one in the middle was Chloe, and the one on the right with the long hair. "She drew this yesterday," Ethan said quietly, "after you texted. She drew me into your family." Yeah. Vivian put the drawing down carefully. "Is that okay?" "I don't know. She lost her mom 3 years ago. I don't want her to get attached if this isn't—" He stopped. "If this isn't real." "It's real, Ethan. I don't know what it is exactly, but it's real." They stood in his tiny kitchen with the broken tile and the leaking faucet he kept meaning to fix. And Ethan felt something shift, like a door opening, like light getting in. "I'm scared," he said. "Me too." "I haven't done this since Sarah. I don't know if I remember how. I've never done this at all. So we're both starting from zero." Ethan almost laughed. "This is a terrible idea." "Probably. We're going to screw it up. Definitely. But we're doing it anyway." Vivian moved closer. "Yeah, we are." This time when they kissed, it was slower, less desperate, like they had time. Like they were choosing this instead of falling into it. When they broke apart, Vivian looked around the apartment again. "Can I ask you something?" "Always." "What do you actually want? Not what you think you're supposed to want. Not what's practical. Just what would make you happy?" Ethan thought about it. "I want Chloe to grow up feeling safe. I want to stop being tired all the time. I want to have dinner without checking my bank account first. I want—" He paused. "I want someone to share it with. The good parts and the bad parts, all of it. That's a good list. What about you?" Vivian sat down at his kitchen table, the same table where he'd opened bills and made lunches and fallen asleep from exhaustion more times than he could count. "I want to stop performing, stop being the person everyone expects me to be. I want to cook something that isn't from a restaurant. I want to wake up and not immediately check my phone. I want to matter to someone in a way that has nothing to do with business." "You matter to me. I know, that's why I'm here." They talked until midnight. About Chloe, about the company, about the logistics of trying to build something between two lives that didn't fit together easily. Vivian was honest about the demands of her job. The travel, the long hours, the constant pressure. Ethan was honest about his limitations. The single-parent schedule, the tight budget, the fear of letting someone new into Chloe's life. None of it was easy. None of it had simple answers. But they kept talking anyway. The next 3 months were messy and imperfect and nothing like a movie. Vivian's schedule was brutal. She'd cancel dinners for emergency board meetings. She'd text at 2 in the morning because she couldn't sleep. She'd show up at Ethan's apartment exhausted and stressed, and they'd argue about stupid things like whether he should let her pay for groceries or what time was too late to call. Ethan was stubborn. He refused her offer to hire a nanny for Chloe. He wouldn't let her buy him a new car, even when his finally died for good. He kept pulling away every time things felt too serious, too real, too much like something that could break him if it ended. But Chloe loved her. That was the thing that kept surprising Ethan. His daughter, who'd been wary of every woman he'd talked to for more than 5 minutes, adored Vivian. She'd drag her to the park to show her the good swings. She'd insist on teaching her the games from school. She'd fall asleep on Vivian's lap during movie nights and wake up asking when she was coming back. "She's never like this," Ethan told Jenny one afternoon while Chloe and Vivian were in the other room attempting to bake cookies. "That's because Vivian treats her like a person, not a project." Jenny was folding laundry, Ethan's laundry, because she'd shown up unannounced and decided his pile was unacceptable. She asks Chloe questions. She listens to the answers. She doesn't talk down to her. "I know, it's just what? Just scary that your daughter's getting attached?" "Ethan, she was going to get attached the second Vivian walked into your life. Kids don't do halfway." "What if it doesn't work out?" Then it doesn't work out and you deal with it. But you can't protect Chloe from everything. Sometimes you just have to let good things happen." In the kitchen, something crashed. Chloe's laughter echoed through the apartment, followed by Vivian saying, "Okay, maybe we use too much flour." Ethan stood and looked through the doorway. His kitchen was a disaster. White powder covered every surface. Chloe had it in her hair. Vivian had it on her face. Neither of them seemed to care. Should we help them? Jenny asked. No, let them figure it out. By November, the promotion at Granfield had kicked in. Ethan's new salary meant he could actually pay rent on time, buy groceries without calculating every item, replace Chloe's 2 small shoes without guilt. It wasn't wealth, but it was stability. And stability felt like luxury after 3 years of freefall. Vivian's situation stabilized too. The board investigation cleared out 3 of Morrison's allies. 2 new members joined who actually supported her vision for the company. The Singapore acquisition went through. The stock price hit an all-time high. But the biggest change was in Vivian herself. She started leaving the office at 6 instead of 9. She stopped checking email during dinner. She learned how to make scrambled eggs in Ethan's kitchen after burning them 5 times. She bought jeans that weren't designer and wore them to the park. You're different, Ethan told her one Saturday morning. They were at his apartment. Chloe was still asleep. Vivian was making coffee in the ancient machine that took 10 minutes and produced something that barely qualified as coffee. Different how? Lighter, like something that was crushing you isn't anymore. She poured 2 cups and handed him one. That's because I stopped trying to be my father, started trying to be myself. Who's that, Nick? I'm still figuring it out. But so far, she's someone who likes spending time with a 6-year-old. Someone who doesn't need 3 pools. Someone who'd rather be here than anywhere else. Ethan pulled her closer. I like her. Yeah? Yeah. They were kissing when Chloe's voice came from the bedroom doorway. Are you guys going to get married? They broke apart. Vivian looked mortified. Ethan tried not to laugh. Why would you ask that? Ethan said. Because Katie's mom said when grown-ups kiss a lot, they get married, and you kiss a lot. Katie's mom talks too much. So are you. Ethan glanced at Vivian, who looked equally panicked. We haven't talked about that yet, baby. But you like her, right? Yeah, I like her a lot. And she likes you? I hope so. Then you should get married. That's how it works. Chloe went to the kitchen and poured herself cereal like she'd just solved a complex mathematical equation. Ethan and Vivian stood in the living room, not looking at each other. Sorry, Ethan said quietly. She's 6. She doesn't understand. No, it's okay. Vivian stopped. Do you want that? Eventually? Do you? I asked first. Ethan took a breath. Yeah, I think I do. Not now, but eventually. If you wanted, so I want. Vivian's voice was barely above a whisper. I want all of it. You and Chloe and this apartment and the terrible coffee. I want the life you built. I want to be part of it. You already are. Then let's keep going. See where it takes us. In the kitchen, Chloe was singing about sea cows again. Ethan thought about that day at the beach. About broken heels in 4 seconds and a stranger's hands catching someone mid-fall. He thought about how close he'd come to saying no to all of it. To the dinner, to the texts, to letting Vivian into his carefully guarded life. How close he'd come to missing this. Okay, he said, let's keep going. Christmas came with complications. Vivian's family, her mother, her aunt, her cousin, who managed the European division, expected her to spend the holiday at their estate in Connecticut. It was tradition, non-negotiable. Come with me, Vivian said. They were wrapping presents in Ethan's living room while Chloe was at school. All of you. Your family doesn't want us there. I don't care what they want. I want you there. Vivian, please, I've spent every Christmas for the past 10 years pretending I'm fine. Pretending I don't mind being alone in a house full of people who only care about business. This year, I want it to be different. Ethan looked at the presents spread across the floor. Most of them were from Vivian. Too many, too expensive, but she couldn't help herself. She'd spent 2 hours at the toy store picking out things Chloe had mentioned once in passing. What if they hate me? They will definitely hate you. You're everything they're terrified of. Thanks. But I don't care. I've spent my whole life making decisions based on what other people think. I'm done. She grabbed his hand. Come with me, please. So they went to Connecticut. The estate was exactly as absurd as Ethan expected. 15 bedrooms, a staff of 12, Christmas decorations that looked professionally installed. Vivian's mother took one look at Ethan and Chloe, and her expression went cold. Vivian, can I speak with you? Privately? They disappeared into another room. Ethan stood in the foyer with Chloe, who was staring at a chandelier that was bigger than their entire apartment. Daddy, is this a castle? Something like that. Are there princesses? Think so, baby. Then what's the point? Ethan almost laughed. Vivian came back 15 minutes later, her jaw tight. We're leaving. What? My mother just spent 10 minutes explaining why you're inappropriate, why Chloe's presence is disrespectful to family traditions, why I'm embarrassing myself. She grabbed their coats. So we're leaving. Vivian, you can't just... Yes, I can. I told her I'd rather spend Christmas in your apartment eating takeout than spend another minute pretending to be the daughter she wants. She looked at Chloe. Ready to go. We just got here. I know, but it turns out this place is boring. Want to go home and make cookies instead? Chloe's face lit up. Yes. They drove back to the city in Vivian's car, a Tesla she'd bought but rarely drove because she usually had a driver. Chloe fell asleep in the back seat. Vivian's hands were shaking on the steering wheel. You okay? Ethan asked. No, but I will be. Your family's going to be furious. They've been furious at me my entire life. This is just one more thing. She glanced at him. Was I wrong? To leave like that? No, you were honest. That's never wrong. It felt good, scary, but good. They spent Christmas in Ethan's apartment. Jenny came over with Chinese food and cheap wine. They ate until they were too full and watched Chloe play with her new toys and argued about whether Die Hard counted as a Christmas movie. It was chaotic and imperfect and nothing like the elegant holiday Vivian had always known. It was also the best Christmas she'd ever had. Thank you, she told Ethan later, after Jenny had left and Chloe was asleep. For what? For showing me what this could be. A real life, not a performance. You did that yourself. I just gave you permission to stop pretending. Vivian leaned against him. I love you. The words hung in the air. Ethan felt his breath catch. You don't have to say it back, Vivian said quickly. I just wanted you to know. I love you too. The words felt rusty, unused for too long, but they were true. I think I have for a while. I was just too scared to admit it. What are you scared of? Losing this. Losing you. Going back to being alone. You're not going to lose me, Ethan. I'm not going anywhere. You can't promise that. No, but I can promise to try. Every single day. That's all any of us can do. In February, Vivian asked Ethan to move in with her. Not to the mansion, she'd already decided to sell it, but to a house she'd bought in Brooklyn. 3 bedrooms, a small yard close to Chloe's school. Human-sized. I don't need your charity, Ethan said immediately. It's not charity. It's a house. A house I want to share with you. Vivian pulled out the listing. Look at it before you say no. The house was perfect. Not too big, not too fancy. Just a normal house in a normal neighborhood where Chloe could ride her bike and Ethan could actually breathe. I can't afford half the mortgage, he said. Then pay what you can afford. This isn't about money, Ethan. It's about building something together. You've given me so much already. The rent extension, the lawyers, fixing things with my job, and you gave me my life back. You reminded me what it feels like to be human, so we're even. She took his hand. Please, let me do this. Let me give us a real home. They moved in March. Jenny helped pack. Chloe was beside herself with excitement about having her own room. Ethan spent a week convinced he was making a terrible mistake, moving too fast, accepting too much, setting himself up for heartbreak. But the first morning in the new house, he woke up to Chloe laughing in the kitchen and Vivian attempting to make pancakes and failing spectacularly. He walked downstairs and found them covered in batter, the kitchen a disaster, both of them smiling. Daddy, Vivian says we can have pancakes for dinner too. That's because I can't make anything else, Vivian admitted. Ethan looked at them, his daughter and the woman he loved, making a mess and not caring, living life instead of surviving it, and felt something settle in his chest that had been loose for 3 years. Peace. That's what it was? Just peace. Come help us, Vivian said. before we burn the house down. They made pancakes together. They were terrible pancakes, but they ate them anyway. Spring came with its own challenges. Work got busy for both of them. Vivian traveled more. Ethan's new position meant longer hours. They fought about schedules and responsibilities and who forgot to pick up milk. Normal fights, boring fights. The kind of fights that meant they were actually building a life together. And through it all, Chloe thrived. She made friends in the new neighborhood. She started calling Vivian by her name instead of Daddy's friend. She drew new pictures, always 3 stick figures, always smiling, always together. One Saturday in May, Vivian suggested they go back to the beach, the same beach where it all started. "Are you sure?" Ethan asked. "Yeah, I want to see it again. With you. With both of you." They drove out on a Sunday morning. The beach was less crowded than it had been that first day. Chloe ran straight to the water, still searching for her elusive sea cows. Ethan and Vivian walked to the pier. "This is where I fell," Vivian said, pointing to the gap in the planks that had broken her heel. They fixed it. Probably for the best. Don't want anyone else falling. They stood at the railing and looked out at the ocean. Behind them, Chloe's laughter carried on the wind. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't been there that day?" Vivian asked. "Sometimes, but not in a bad way. More like grateful that I was." "Me too." She turned to face him. "I've been thinking about what Chloe said, about getting married." Ethan's heart started pounding. "Yeah? I know it's fast. I know we're still figuring things out, but I also know I don't want to spend my life with anyone else. I want this, you and Chloe and terrible pancakes and arguments about groceries. I want all of it. Vivian, I'm not proposing, not officially. I just want you to know that when you're ready, if you're ready, my answer is yes." Ethan pulled her close. "Ask me." "What?" "Ask me, right now." "Ethan Mercer, will you marry me?" He kissed her instead of answering, long and deep and certain. When they broke apart, Vivian was crying. "Is that a yes?" "That's a yes." Chloe came running up from the beach. "That's a yes." Chloe's. "Why is everyone crying?" "Happy crying," Vivian said. "The good kind." "Did something good happen?" "Yeah, baby," Ethan said. "Something really good happened." They told Chloe that night, after dinner, sitting together on the couch in their house that was finally starting to feel like home. "Vivian and I are getting married," Ethan said, "which means she's going to be part of our family officially. Is that okay with you?" Chloe looked at Vivian. "Will you be my mom?" Vivian's breath caught. "I'd like to be, if you want that." "I want that." Chloe climbed into Vivian's lap. Katie was right. When grown-ups kiss a lot, they do get married. They planned a small wedding for August, just family and close friends. Jenny was the maid of honor and cried through the entire ceremony. Chloe was the flower girl and took her job very seriously, making sure every petal was placed correctly. Vivian's mother didn't come. Her aunt sent a card with no note inside. But Margaret Chen came, along with half the board, and they seemed genuinely happy for her. Ethan's sister flew in from Nevada and spent the entire reception telling anyone who would listen about how her brother had caught a falling billionaire and somehow ended up married to her. "You're like a fairy tale," she told him. "Fairy tales don't have arguments about whose turn it is to do laundry. The good ones do, yet." They honeymooned in their own house, spending a week doing nothing but sleeping late and cooking together and being deliberately lazy. Chloe stayed with Jenny, who reported back that the kid had asked 14 times when her parents were coming home. "She misses you," Jenny told Ethan over the phone. "We'll pick her up tomorrow." "Take your time. She's fine. You deserve this." But they picked her up anyway, a day early, because the house felt too empty without her. Life settled into a rhythm after that. Work and school and family dinners. Vivian teaching Chloe how to negotiate for later bedtimes. Ethan teaching Vivian how to fix a leaking faucet. Small moments that added up to something bigger than any of them had expected. A year after the wedding, Vivian stepped down as CEO of Sterling Industries. Not because she had to, not because anyone forced her, but because she wanted to. I've been running that company for 10 years, she told Ethan. I'm tired, and there are other things I want to do. Like what? Like starting a foundation. Helping families who are struggling the way you were struggling. Making sure kids don't go hungry. Making sure parents don't have to choose between rent and food. That's a good thing to do. I think so too. She smiled. And I want more time with Chloe. With you. With this life we built. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything. She sold her shares, set up the foundation, and threw herself into work that actually mattered. Work that helped people instead of just making money. Within 6 months, the foundation had helped 300 families in New York alone. Ethan kept working at Granfield. The promotion led to another promotion. He'd never be wealthy, but they were comfortable, stable, safe. And Chloe grew up knowing she was loved. By her father who'd never stopped fighting for her. By her stepmother who'd chosen them both. By a family that was imperfect and messy and real. Sometimes, late at night, Ethan would think about that day at the beach. About 4 seconds that changed everything. About the choice to catch a falling stranger instead of letting her drop. He'd think about Morrison's phone call. About the moment he'd almost signed that paper out of fear. About how close he'd come to choosing survival over integrity. And he'd realize that the thing that saved him wasn't catching Vivian on that pier. It was what came after. The choice to be honest when lying would have been easier. The choice to fight when giving up would have been simpler. The choice to let someone in when staying closed off would have been safer. Because that's what love actually is, Ethan learned. Not the dramatic moment. Not the rescue. But the daily decision to keep showing up, keep trying, keep choosing the other person even when it's hard. Even when it's scary. Even when you're not sure it's going to work. 2 years after that first day at the beach, they went back one more time. All 3 of them. The pier had been renovated. The parking lot repaved. Everything looked newer, cleaner, less like the place where it all started. But the ocean was the same. Endless and indifferent and beautiful. Chloe ran ahead, still searching for sea cows, even though she was 8 now and knew they didn't live in New York. Ethan and Vivian walked behind her, hands linked, watching her play. Do you ever miss it? Ethan asked. The company, the power, all of it. No. Vivian squeezed his hand. I miss who I thought I was supposed to be, but I don't miss being her. Who are you now? I'm Chloe's mom. I'm your wife. I'm someone who makes terrible pancakes and helps families and goes to bed at a reasonable hour. She smiled. I'm happy. That's who I am. Chloe came running back, her hair wild from the wind. Can we come back next week? Maybe, Ethan said. Please? We'll see, baby. She rolled her eyes, already mastering the preteen exasperation, and ran back to the water. She's growing up, Vivian said quietly. Yeah. Are we doing okay? As parents? Ethan watched his daughter dance in and out of the waves, fearless and joyful and loved. Yeah, I think we're doing okay. They stayed until sunset, until the sky turned orange and gold and the beach emptied out, until Chloe was tired and sandy and ready to go home. As they walked back across the sand, Ethan looked up at the pier where it all started, where a woman in heels had almost fallen and an exhausted single father had caught her without thinking. 4 seconds that changed 3 lives. But really, it wasn't the 4 seconds that mattered. It was everything that came after. The choice to be honest instead of careful. The choice to be vulnerable instead of protected. The choice to build something real instead of perfect. That's the thing about falling, Ethan realized. Everyone talks about the catch, the dramatic moment, the rescue, the hero. But nobody talks about what happens next, about the hard work of standing up together, about learning to walk side by side, about choosing each other every single day even when it's not easy. Because that's where the real story is. Not in the fall or the catch, but in the decision to keep going, to keep trying, to keep loving even when you're scared. Vivian leaned against him as they walked to the car. Chloe was already asleep in his arms, her face peaceful and trusting. What are you thinking about? Vivian asked. Just that I'm glad I went to the beach that day. Me too. And I'm glad I caught you. Me too. And I'm glad we didn't give up when things got hard. Vivian smiled. Me too. They drove home through the city they both loved, past buildings lit up against the darkening sky, past neighborhoods full of people living their own complicated lives. Past the apartment where Ethan had once lived alone, barely surviving. Past the mansion Vivian had sold because she didn't need that much space. Home to the house they'd chosen together. The life they'd built together. The family they'd become together. Not because it was easy. Not because it was perfect. But because they'd decided it was worth fighting for. And in the end, that decision, that daily choice to show up and try and love despite the fear, that's what saved them both. Not the catch, the choice.